travel is therapy. It's like, yes, but also you should also see a therapist. And it's not like a cure-all of like, I'm gonna go see Machu Picchu or these like eight wonders of the world, seven wonders of the world. And then I'm going to be there and everything else in my life is going to melt away and I'm just going to be in bliss and my life is perfect. No, what actually happens is you get there and you have all this buildup and you're like, I just want to get there. I'm there. And you could have actually the the most rock bottom moments at one of these beautiful places because you realize, wow, I thought this was going to solve everything and it didn't. So now I'm here looking at this beautiful thing that everyone has wanted to see in their whole life, but I still feel the same. I still feel XYZ. And that's when you start to really think like, oh, if this wasn't the cure-all, then what do I need to do?
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions, Mental Health and Behavioral Health Counseling in Iowa.
My name is Maggie Alton. I am a therapist with Heart and Solutions. The You Need a Counselor podcast is a podcast designed for people curious about counseling, but who have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Our guests today are some familiar faces, familiar voices. We've got returning guests today that we just love having on this show. First up, we've got Geleen Antonio joining us from, I'm not sure where in the world, that's always the question. And Geleen is the founder of Travel Not to Escape, which is a platform that helps people to help plan solo travel, but also focusing on not just like the agenda of the travel, not just the buying the tickets and all of that, but really focusing on being able to come back with experiences that really are meaningful in our lives and for ourselves as individuals, and helps people to do a lot of healing on those travel trips. Geleen has also been expanding that to help people in other ways. So creating a wellness directory and helping to look at what are the patterns and trends that people are facing and dealing with when it comes to solo travel, and how can that solo travel help us with our own self-care and our own healing journeys. So welcome, Geleen. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we've got Teresa Carnegie here, another repeat guest that we just love having here. So Teresa is a somatic healer. In her first interview with us, we heard a lot about the traumatic situations that really turned her attention to wellness and to healing and to being able to help other people who might be struggling with some of the same situations that she was able to overcome in her own journey. Teresa is a highly creative person. She is the author of Gratitude and Fun Mental Wellness Workbook and Journal, and is a very creative person, pottery, writing, all kinds of different projects, and which again to me is amazing just because Teresa grew up with the understanding or idea that she was not a creative person. And here she is, a blooming creative in all aspects, including her work as a somatic healer. So welcome both of you to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank
you for having
you.
me again. Yeah.
Goodness, we love having you both on the show. So, Geleen, we got to hear that you are doing a TED Talk coming up. And so we're really excited to hear more about that. Can you tell us what that talk is going to be about and what people can expect to hear?
Yes, I'm so excited. And I'm currently in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I can't remember where we were the last time we spoke, but probably somewhere in Asia or in Spain. I think I've been to 10 countries this year so far. So I've been losing track. And I've actually been doing a lot of speaking this year. So I've spoken on 5 stages so far, and my last stage for this year is going to be the TEDx Tupelo in Mississippi. And it is a woman-focused TEDx. So I'm very excited to be surrounded by a bunch of other inspiring women speaking about different topics that relate to us. So my topic, the theme is woman and wanderlust, but I have a bit of a spin on this topic because I'll be diving into how solo travel breaks generational curses. And I've shared a bit of my story of burnout and kind of working through my own like breaking of patterns and diving into healing. And so this actually is really my story that I'm going to be sharing on the stage. So I'll be diving into like my opening line is like, have you ever looked at your life and looked at your relationships, your environment and realized who chose all of this and really diving into the choices that we made and the ones that were made for us, and how I ended up giving up everything that I thought was on paper successful and leaving that all behind to travel out of a suitcase. And it's been 5 years and counting. But I relate it specifically to being a Filipino immigrant and how when I was born, shortly after, just like a few months after, my mom actually also left everything behind and immigrated from the Philippines to the US, leaving me and my siblings actually in the Philippines. And she would send money back to us. Um, and when I was 33, just a few years ago, I actually made my way back to the Philippines for the first time as an adult, and I saw in the airport that there's a whole section of overseas Filipino workers. Like our number one export as a country is actually our people, specifically our women. 80% of overseas Filipino workers are women. And so if you think about this from a cultural perspective, you have the majority of children growing up without a mother. And that's just the norm. And diving into my talk is the impact from a generational perspective of having sacrifice be equated with love and how we're just kind of used to not having our moms at their crucial ages of growing up and what type of patterns we inherit because of that. And for me, going through that journey and also using solo travel as my path through healing, and what are the 4 key takeaways that I can recommend to others based off of my own experience, but also the experiences of people who I've interviewed on my own podcast who've had very similar journeys of healing as well from patterns that they inherited. And it's not just for Filipinos, it's really all of us have inherited certain patterns that we can use solo travel as a way to get that pause, that perspective to be able to break and actually ask ourselves like, what kind of life do we want to live? So yeah, that's the TEDx, and I'm so excited to be able to share that. I only have 7 minutes to share all of that, so it'll be a fun exercise and being concise.
I was going to say that's a lot to fit in 7 minutes, but really exciting. So you had mentioned that cultural phenomenon of women who are basically going out of their homes, and then and I'm curious, both you and Teresa, if you've seen any similarities, or I know you had mentioned before, like being data driven, um with that generational issue, and obviously for different reasons, but like how in this case it's because they are literally leaving because they have to, and then like how that is similar or potentially different from like the US trend of moms having to be out um just to make ends meet.
Yeah, and I think there is a very big similarity. This is a reason why I'm bringing it into my talk as well, because while it is a very um, very specific thing in my culture that happens based off of years of colonization and migration and guilt and all of that. A lot of these same themes result in the same actions, right? Leaving the home for survival basis, raising, as a single mom, raising kids without support, right? This all results in not having the presence there. So your children realize, yes, there's love there, but they don't have the emotional support because they're in survival mode. So I think that, yes, there's very much similarity in the pattern, because the end result is the same.
And Teresa, with somatic healing, I know that there is so much where our body maintains a lot of these generational challenges and a lot of these messages that we received growing up. And so tell us a little bit about that from a somatic healing perspective.
Well, it's why I love somatic healing actually, is because um, you by doing different things, like there's breath work, there's meditation, there's just moving your body, is it's recognizing and listening to your body, which then starts allowing your nervous system to feel safe, and emotions can come out. Like you can just be in the middle of, I don't know, like a weird stretch like this, kind of thing, and you'll start crying. But the thing is, with somatic, you don't have the memories. So you're releasing all this built up emotion that was stuck in your body and could have been holding you back from doing something that you were always meant to do, but you had this emotion just stuck there holding you back, so you couldn't make that next step. And this way you don't feel traumatized. Like I've done various different types of things, and there's always that one that makes you go over different things and bring it up, and you're bawling and you're crying, and it's pain, like you're living through it again. And with somatic, you don't have that. You might start crying because you feel that emotion of like, I'm so sad, or I was left. Like you have that, but you don't recognize it as, sometimes you will, sometimes something will pop in your head, but generally I find you don't. So it's not like it's being associated with some memory that you have. It is just being released, and you no longer have to worry. It's like that memory starts fading in the background. My first experience with it was, I was with my physiotherapist, and she's like an osteopath, so she was moving my body around, and all of a sudden I just burst out crying. And I did have that time I had a memory, and but it was a split second, and so it wasn't the whole entire memory, but I'm pretty sure I had it because it had been looping in my head recently before that session, and boom, it's like that memory now, like it had been looping, gone. It's not gone, it's there. It's now in the back of my mind. It rarely comes up. When it does come up, I don't have the emotion attached to it. I don't have the recollection of reliving it again, which was what was happening while it was playing and looping in my head. And so it now doesn't have power over me like it used to. And it's the subconscious power, because you don't recognize that it's being held in your body. And so, as Geleen was saying, you've got these formative years without your mother, and that can leave a lot of hurt feelings, the unlovable, you're not worthy, a lot of those things we come out of childhood with. And it's amazing how releasing that feeling, that it just can allow you to maybe make a step in life you never would have thought of, you never expected to do. You um, see yourself going in a way that's exciting, but you couldn't see that way before. And it could be big, it could be small, it could be something like in a relationship, it could be something like in a career. Like you just never know, because you've no idea how that's holding you back, that emotion that's stuck there.
So kind of listening to both of you, I'm curious because, listening to you talk, Teresa, about the somatic side, which I agree with. I'm currently kind of getting into all of the trainings on somatic therapy. So I'm with you on all of that stuff. But while I was listening to you speak, it kind of occurred to me that part of the reason that travel for a lot of people is such a I don't want to say fun, but enriching thing is because of, I guess, for lack of a better term, the novelty, the presence, right? Like you're in a whole different situation and you're not really in your routine. And so I guess in this case, like, I guess, is it, I'm trying to think how I want to say what I want to say. Do you feel like the somatic side of stuff comes first, like I start to process and then I'm able to like do the travel and like be brave and do all that stuff? Or do you feel like it's more kind of the opposite? Do you feel like sometimes it's people travel and then they're out of their routine and that opens up space for awareness, somatically, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it happens both because you can, for me, travel was just, I got to a point and I was like, this is possible. And I mean, I got a postcard that said, "Happy birthday. I'm living in London now," from a friend, a childhood friend from here in Canada. And I was like, wait, what? This is possible? And the very next day I went to work, and this was, long time ago. So I phoned the consulate instead of internet. And I found out what I had to do to then make that choice. It was not something that I really had. This was so long ago. Somatic, I don't even know if it was something that anybody really knew about, right? It was just more of, I didn't know the possibilities, and I knew I needed a change in my life from where I was at. I was feeling stuck. So sometimes I think you have that, but that is also somatic now looking back on it, because I listened to myself. Like I was getting those, you're stuck, you need a change, your life isn't working the way it is. And so I made an action from listening to myself. I mean, there is other things where, maybe you do what you think you're supposed to do. Sorry, quotes. But it is really one of the things I tell people. You are you doing something because you think you're supposed to do it, or are you doing it because you know that's for you? And so if you find yourself traveling because you think that's what you're supposed to do, and or you're going along with somebody because that's their big thing, you can then, you're surrounded by the different, that in itself, yes, now you are getting that change that maybe you weren't listening to yourself. You weren't recognizing what your body was trying to tell you. And that did just happen. And then now, you got the change, because when you do travel, Geleen will tell you, when you do travel and you experience all the new, that does put you in a completely different mindset. And you are recognizing things that you never would have recognized. And you are noticing, oh, so you mean everybody's life isn't exactly the same way as my little bubble of a life, and you could just, it's like this whole opening up of things. And then that in it's like that can also help you start recognizing what you're, because you're now, the blinders are off kind of thing. And it gives you the opportunity to start listening to what your body is trying to tell you.
Yeah, I agree. I think you said it so eloquently and so accurately to my story as well, is that travel wasn't a possibility for me until I started to pause and ask myself, like, what did I actually want? Once I got through the cloudy haze of what was happening in my life, the only thing I knew that excited me was the travel. And so what would that look like if I allowed myself to dive into that? And it has been like an iterative process. That's why my platform is called Travel Not to Escape, because we actually do use travel as an escape. And people start saying, oh, travel is therapy. It's like, yes, but also you should also see a therapist. And it's not like a cure-all of like, I'm gonna go see Machu Picchu or these like eight wonders of the world, seven wonders of the world, how many there are now. And and then I'm going to be there and everything else in my life is going to melt away and I'm just going to be in bliss and my life is perfect. No, what actually happens is you get there and you have all this buildup and you're like, I just want to get there. I'm there. And you could have actually the the most rock bottom moments at one of these beautiful places because you realize, wow, I thought this was going to solve everything and it didn't. So now I'm here looking at this beautiful thing that everyone has wanted to see in their whole life, but I still feel the same. I still feel XYZ. And that's when you start to really think like, oh, if this wasn't the cure all, then what do I need to do? So I think it does allow you that perspective that you mentioned, the travel. Like I think everyone should travel, but I think that there's different purposes for it as well. Like you could just have an escape type of vacation. Like not saying that that's bad. Sometimes that's what you need. But if you are wanting to maybe you did get to that moment, you realize, this is deeper, then you can use travel in a different way. There's a couple of ways that like I have seen travel really help, like going back to having maybe like not a present caregiver or parents around. When you are traveling, specifically solo traveling, you end up becoming your own parent and child at the same time because you have that moment you're actually having to ask yourself like what do I want to do? What do I feel like doing right now? Where do I go today? And like, am I hungry? Am I not? Am I tired? You have to listen to those cues and then start building that trust muscle with yourself to feed yourself when you're hungry, to put yourself to bed when you're tired, and that's, I think, just reparenting yourself through that solitude that solo travel provides is such a beautiful thing that results. The other thing is it does allow you to make space for those emotions that you might have been bottling up because when you're in survival mode, emotions are obstacles that you don't want to process because it's going to impede on you doing your day-to-day to survive. So whenever I had brought up emotions when I was growing up, it was like, no, don't say that. Like my mom would get angry because it was like, no, we're in survival mode, even though she didn't say it. But like if there's anything else outside of the basic needs that I can provide for you, that's just out of scope, right? And so when you're on your own, when you're finally able to feel those emotions, a lot of emotions will arise. And that's the time when you might be crying on a subway or like at a tour, having like a panic attack, whatever it is that surfaces, I think like lean into it, right? Because a lot of those have been suppressed for so long. But now that you have the space to ask yourself what you want to do, and where do you want to go? A lot of those emotions will surface, and it's a great time to actually lean into that, journal it out, figure out what you need to process. And then the other thing that the travel has really helped with as well is just being joyful. I think that especially when you're in survival mode, um, joy, happiness isn't necessarily prioritized, or you're taught like, oh, you have to hit this milestone before you can think about rewarding yourself or celebrating or any of that. But when you're traveling, you can lean into that play. Things that, like you said, the pottery. Like, what are the things that you actually like to do that just have a light in them for you? No rhyme or reason or tie to productivity, but you can do pottery classes while you're traveling or when you're back and integrate that back into your life. And I think that's the final piece is you might be going on these like big broad adventures, but if you're not integrating those lessons once you come back, then you're going to constantly be traveling to escape and trying to figure out chasing that version of you that was happy. So I think that's the piece as well, is like you realize what the possibilities are while you're traveling, but how are you going to consolidate that into like who you are moving forward?
I just want to say on top of what you've just explained, Geleen, because that was awesome. It's that as adults, we don't recognize what we think is fun. We do what other people think is fun. We do what society thinks is fun, or we don't believe in it because we're adults. We can't do
Mhm.
that because that's not adulting. And so we don't listen to, the little things that would make us feel happy in like your soul deep happy, because we're too busy worried about, we're in our heads and we're
Mhm.
worried about what others will think. Why we do, I don't know, but we all do it. And and then and talking about the emotions is when emotions come up, you're right. Our first, is our first instinct is to avoidance. I can't feel that, or it's too much. I'm not in a great place right now to start crying or whatever. Then that sticks, that stays there. So if you don't, feel, I like to, if I have an emotion come up, I immediately shut my eyes and I just feel in my body. Where in my body am I feeling this emotion? I just feel it. And it's gone within seconds. And then it's gone. And it doesn't keep coming up because now it's gone. And we just don't do that enough.
Absolutely. Well, and one really strong pattern that I find with each of you as guests, and part of the, I mean, there's absolutely the travel aspect, but part of the other reason that we were like, we got to get Teresa and Geleen on the lines together is because there is this theme that goes through both of your work of attachment and attachment challenges and attachment wounds, and then identity. Who are we without the things that typically would tend to be identity related, right? And who are we without those things? And I was thinking about both of you about maybe 2 months ago, because I had a travel not to escape moment and situation. With all of the I know neither of you are in the United States right now, but Maggie and I sure are. And we uh this year and still this year, there's been a lot of challenges with immigration in this country, and there's been a lot of threat of deportation, and even for American citizens. So I'm a United States citizen. I was adopted when I was 20 months old, but there's still that threat for a lot of us, even when we're here legally. And as these stories were coming out, and I was hearing the news about citizens being deported to other countries that they weren't from, they had never been to, I started having these thoughts and these fears of what would I do in Korea? I haven't ever been there since I was 6 months old, right? So what would happen then to me? My entire life is here. So my entire identity is here, is what I was thinking. And so I was having a really hard time getting through the day to day, just living with this kind of thought and fear and feeling happening to me. And so I said, okay, I got to do something. And, of course, I'm working in therapy on this, but I said, what if we just took a weekend, and what if we went to Canada, right? Canada's like 7 hours from here. And so we said, Winnipeg's 7 hours away. Let's go for a weekend. Let's take off on a Friday afternoon, and let's just go there, because I needed to know for myself that who I am here in Iowa, right, in my day-to-day life and this job and all of that, that who I am actually outside of all of that stuff was actually not being threatened by these immigration things that are happening, right? That deportation is a threat to a lot of things in my life, my job, my career, my family, my extended family, things like that, right? But that it's not a threat to that main piece of who I am and those main pieces of identity and what's important to me. And so, my little family, my husband, my daughter, and I, we went to Canada for a weekend. And while we were in Canada, I just kept thinking, we're still us. Like, I'm still me here. And that, like, I cannot tell you guys how much of a relief that was, to know that even if that worst thing happened and I was deported to another country that I don't know what to do there, right? I had this experience of like, I don't know anything about Canada. I didn't know how to use the money. I didn't know anything, but we were okay, right? And we were still us, and we still played Uno after dinner, right? Like we just, those things were just so highlighted to me with that experience and just gave me that like anchor inside myself to be able to feel like, okay, they can take a, they, there can be a threat to all of these pieces of my life, but that is not a threat to these pieces, these most important identity pieces of who I am. And I thought of both of you while that was happening, because they went, this is what it is when we lose those external pieces that we think are everything to us, the country we live in and the place we live, and all of those things, where we buy our groceries. Like that was, we went to Giant Tiger all the time, right? So it's these things, and we go, no, we can still do those things. We can still be who we are, even in another place. And that just made such a difference for me, that trip. So it makes me think about what you're talking about with those pieces of it with attachment, right? Because my fear was further triggered because I have the attachment wound of being separated from my biological family and sent to another country, right? So deportation is exactly that. It's that mirror, right? And Geleen, when you were talking about like your mother leaving and then you leave, it's that mirror, right? It's that mirroring, and it's that, and so that can be such a fear. And then going and saying, no, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it on my terms. We're facing that fear every single time, and we're changing what that potential outcome or situation means if it were to happen to us.
Yeah, I love that example that you use, and it's very real, especially with what's happening right now. It's a fear that a lot of people have, unfortunately, and that will continue because we'll see when, when how long this all continues. But I mean, as I go back and forth in the US, it's still very much a fear of mine whenever I enter the country, being an immigrant myself and being a US citizen, but still having that fear regardless, right? Um, and one of the other fears that reminded me of as well was I also had a fear of being sent back to the Philippines, or like my worst fear essentially growing up was that I was going to fail and I was going to end up like poor in the Philippines. And when I first started my business and like quit my corporate job, like that I had worked so hard for, that was still my fear. And of course, the universe was like, okay, well, let's have you live that fear in real life. And so, actually, in the beginning years of my business, just a couple years ago, right when I quit everything, I was at a rock bottom. I had not made any income. I was repivoting my whole business idea, and so no income coming in. And for me, that was like that's the least stable I'd ever been in my life. And of course, it was having those panic attacks. I was living in the Philippines because that was the only place that I had like a support system. And I was basically living that worst nightmare. Like I had no identity, I had no place, I had no house. I live out of a suitcase. Now I'm living in the place that I thought would be like my fail place. And at the end of all of that, and that the whole period lasted 6 months, which I thought was going to be forever. But what kept me going, same thing that you said, was realizing that I was still the same person without the money, without the career, without the friends around me, without the travel. Like I was completely grounded in one place with absolutely nothing, like literally nothing. And I was just sitting there, like laying on the bed, thinking, like, okay, one, I still have a positive outlook. So there's that. I still have that like hope for more. And I know that there's going to be something after this, that this isn't where I end. And what I ended up doing is actually leaning into the play, like Teresa had mentioned. And so my oldest brother is autistic and he lives in the Philippines, and I never got a really chance to get to know him until that moment. So I thought, okay, I have nothing left, but I do have family around me. And what would it look like if I leaned into play? And he and I got to play every week. So even with like no funds, I was still like taking him out to the park, and we would go out and play, and we would like play with Legos or whatever it was. But like leaning into that helped me a lot and also made me realize like when there's nothing there that I could attach my identity to, I could still have an optimistic outlook and I could still be playful. And so those were like key things that I realized were part of me no matter what. So I think, yeah, even regardless of whether you're forced into that rock bottom or if you make that decision yourself, I think it's an important realization to know who are you when there's nothing else.
Mine was the same. It was the loss of job. I was stuck sitting healing from, injuries, concussions, everything that emotionally that had come up for my whole life of trauma. And you hit rock bottom. And you're right, the universe loves to make you face your worst fears. And I cannot express how painful that is. And it is just, you're sitting there and you are literally living the thing you feared your whole life. For me, it was being alone. And I found all kinds of people dropped off in my life for whatever reason, and I was alone. And it was awful. Like I was crying one night with a phone in my hand because I was worried I was going to hurt myself. And I was like, what do I do? Oh my gosh, what do I do? And the thought in my head was, that's not who you are. Like, you can't let those external forces decide what you do or who you are and where your life goes. And yeah, it doesn't just automatically boom, everything's great. You still have to face all of that, and you still have to make that decision every day that you want to choose you. And yeah, it is really hard because again, you've lost your identity. You don't have that job you thought you did great. You don't have, like, for me, losing my job meant I lost my apartment. And like, I was the first female in in two families who owned her own home without any help. And so that was an identity piece too. I was so successful in everybody's mind, in my mind, and I was losing all of that. And it is, you're right though, the only thing you can do is then you start listening to yourself. What makes you happy? What is one little thing you can do today that makes you happy? And I started really small. I tell everybody this. I love hot chocolate. I go find places to drink, a new place to go find and try their hot chocolate. It doesn't have to be big, but you have to do something for yourself. Another one for me was I love walking along the pier in a city here. And it's the longest pier in Canada, and it is the most beautiful. Like, I just love walking it and having the water. And so then it was hitting me, the smells, the sounds, the feeling of the wind on my face, like, because it's not always the nicest part because it's on the water, right? And it helped, those little things. It's just trying little things and every day doing something small and listening to yourself and finding what's fun. And then you do things that, being told you've never been creative, and you start doing creative things. And I was always told I couldn't sing. I started singing this summer. So, it's these little things that you are now, then you can tackle these bigger stories that you've always been told or that you've always believed. And you can, they're stories. They're not real, but we're stuck there, and it becomes part of our identity, and I was getting my hair done in this style. I was like, I need something new. I'm at that point. It's been, months since I've tried something new. And she's like, well, you could go, why not take singing lessons? And the first thing out of my mouth was, oh no, I can't do that. I can't sing. I'm awful. And it's horrible. And I'm tone deaf and all this stuff. And it was like, but wait a minute. Am I? Huh. That's what everybody's always told me. But is this true? And so while I was in the chair, I started Googling and looking up, coaches. And it's interesting because in our in our first initial consultation call, she's like, I can guarantee you're not tone deaf. That's what somebody told you, and it's not true because 1% or 1 or 2% of the population of the world is tone deaf. So, and like she said, everybody can sing. It's something everybody can do. And but you have that thought in your head, and but like tackling these big stories of who you are doesn't come easy. You have to go with the little things, and you have to listen to what makes you happy and have fun and just enjoy yourself. And then you can, deal with life and who you are.
I see. So something that we've kind of hinted around or on or whatever is like Julie said, that attachment and that identity and how that all kind of fits together. And as I was sitting here kind of listening to the discourse, um, absolutely we take those stories and we build when we build up this identity that isn't necessarily ours. But something that I found interesting that I want to throw out is number one, I guess, we tell ourselves these stories, but we also tell ourselves these stories that, like, in order for it to be a part of our identity, we have to be good at it. And that isn't necessarily true. Like, you can love to sing and be absolutely horrible at it and still want to do it, and that's totally fine. Like, there's nothing that says you have to be good, whatever that means, at something in order for it to be something that really resonates with you. Or, same thing, like you were talking earlier, being creative. I'm kind of that way too. I've been, I don't think I'm creative necessarily, but I'm sure other people would think differently. And with all of that kind of being said, and I know this is probably like the most loaded question, but with that being said, for people who are kind of still in that space of trying to sort of deconstruct their identity from what other people have told them is their identity, like I said, really, I know there's a lot, but like, any thoughts on like first steps for people on building that awareness or kind of tuning into their emotions, or building that when we are always kind of in survival mode?
I mean, it comes with the theme of this podcast, but you need a counselor. So I think that it's so important to have a third party perspective. When you're in it, when you're in that survival mode, nothing's really going to penetrate. So if you want to make a change, you have to decide that, yes, I'm going to make a change. I don't know what that's going to look like, but my first step is getting it out of my head and having someone help me. Because I'm not going to be able to see the clear path ahead. So when I was in like one of my very first rock bottom moments, I remember being on the stairwell of my office and crying at like 7:30 in the morning and just like Googling what's the point. And like somehow
Mm-hmm.
my Google search terms landed me on a therapist. And I booked a therapy session that same week. Saw her for, I mean, I've been seeing a therapist since then, right? And that was in 2015. So that helped me. Whatever, and at different moments in my life, I've sought external help. So whether it was another counselor or maybe it was a coach, someone that would just give me that perspective. Like when I was trying to pivot my career, I was thinking, oh, I have to go get an MBA and then I can climb the corporate ladder. But hiring a coach actually she asked me, she's like, what is it that you actually want to do? And this was in 2020. And I was like, oh, I think I need to go to grad school. She's like, why? Why do you think you need to go to grad school? What would that get you? And she just started asking me these questions that I would not have thought to ask myself. And basically, at the end of this like few month coaching period, this is actually when I manifested the TEDx talk. I was like, actually, I think I want to give a TED talk. Like I'm terrible and so like panic ridden when it comes to public speaking, but I don't know, I have this like urge that maybe a TED talk could happen. And so we dissected what that could look like and what would it be about and who would be in the audience and what would I be wearing, like start to make these things a little bit more possible and real for you. But it starts with having that additional perspective that you can just give yourself. And it maybe you can have that in like a free mentor, or like so many people want to help you. I don't say friends because sometimes friends give you different types of perspectives. And so I would say
Mhm.
like third party, unbiased
Yep.
opinion is so helpful.
I agree, because when I found myself alone, how to move forward, it was I found a coach. And for me, when I found myself alone, I was also dealing with health issues. From all my car accidents, I gained weight. Well, that put pressure on my brain, squishing my optical nerves. I was going to lose my vision. So I was like dealing with a lot, and it would happen to be 2020. So there was a lot going on, right? And the drugs weren't helping, like nothing was helping. So I found a health coach, and just having that person to talk to. Um, because at the time, the counselor I was working with was very concussion focused, and that wasn't where I was at that moment. So this coach was like, she taught me, like, listen, what, like, Geleen was saying, what do you want? Where do you want to see what your values are in life? And it's not values like I need to, lots of money. It's values like I want to be healthy, kind of thing, right? And so for me, it wasn't about losing weight. It was about changing my lifestyle, because I recognized that my lifestyle was not making me happy. And, that's not something that's easy. I'm not going to lie. That is like one of the hardest things to do, is change your lifestyle, because those are ingrained for, comfort and everything. But you have that person who talks to you, who asks you the question, who you can bounce things off of, and they're focused on that. Like you said, your friends, you're going to get all kinds of stuff because they're living the same life and you're in the same place. And or like me, I didn't have anybody, so I was like, oh, and it was depressing because I was like, I'm paying somebody to talk to, to talk about life things, be my friend. Not was She wasn't my friend, that kind of thing, right? But and you kind of feel down that you had to do that, but then you start recognizing how your life is slightly changing, and you don't recognize it right away. It's months later, you're like, huh, this isn't making me as sad, or I'm doing this when I never would have thought of doing that. And your in initial reactions to different situations start changing. So before, you would have been like, freaking out, and then you're like, I can deal with this. I know I can deal with this. Or something might have got you really upset before, very angry, and you're like, it really doesn't affect my life, so I'm fine. I'm just going to move on. And different things, because you've now made those slight little changes that built up. And if I did not, I speak very highly. I actually tell people, I'm like, you need therapy, or you need a coach. Excuse me, because if you don't have that person who's on your side pushing you to make those changes, or recognize things that you can't recognize on your own, you can't move forward. You can't get out of where you're at. And it's amazing how many people will come up with different reasons for why they can't get a counselor or a coach, but highly recommend.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for being here on the show. I, of course, want to invite you back for the spring, both of you, because I just love talking to you both, and I just feel like we could talk for another 3 or 5 hours on these topics. It's just always such a great conversation. I just appreciate both of you so much. We can find Teresa's book is called Gratitude and Fun Mental Wellness Workbook with Journal on Amazon. We'll link that there. You can also find Teresa on her website and on Facebook and on Instagram to get connected for that somatic healing consultation, and then working together going forward. Geleen, you can find at Travel Not to Escape. There is the support there. There's a lot of, and then on Instagram at Geleen on the Go, and at travel not to escape on Instagram as well. And there's a lot of posts and just discussions and things like that happening on Facebook in the group that are just, it's nice to see other people also chiming in on those things and having the community there. So thank you both so much. And we'll put all of your links in the show notes, but we just really, really appreciate you guys coming on the show. And I so look forward to you both coming back in the spring.
Always a pleasure being able to chat with you and chat with Teresa as well and have these like really meaningful discussions. So always appreciate being on.
We love
Yes, thank you. I always enjoy it. It's so much fun. And the conversation topics change every time. It's great. We just keep going and going. And
Absolutely. I love it. I love it.
I'm Geleen Antonio, and I need a counselor.
I'm Teresa Carnegie, and I need a counselor.
I'm Maggie Alton.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us